Hi, and welcome to At Home with AI, relatable AI for regular people. This is Stephanie, and today I'm going to be telling you about my experience with Claude Cowork and whether it could help me sell my clothes on Poshmark. I had a pile of old clothes laying around and shoes, and about over 20 items. I had been putting off listing it because it can be really a lot of work to list things on Poshmark, mostly looking up the value of items, inputting all of the measurements and the brand information. So I was convinced that maybe Claude Cowork could help me with that. And I will tell you exactly what I did and how well it was able to do that task. So in my personal life, I'm mostly working with browser-based AI tools. I really use Gemini a lot because I have a Google AI Pro account. Claude Cowork is different. It's an application you install on your computer. Actually, it's the Claude application that you install, and it can do things on your behalf. It can surf the web, it can go to certain websites and do certain things, it can organize your files, and so on. I hadn't been able to use it because I'm not going to install it on my work computer, not allowed. I had a Chromebook at home previously, and since Chromebooks don't have traditional file systems, you can't use Cowork on them. But I just picked up one of the new MacBook Neos, which I'm pretty happy with. And one of the first things I knew I wanted to do was try Claude Cowork. So here's what I did. To set it up again, I installed the Claude app. I also had to sign up for the Pro plan because Cowork is only available with the Pro plan, and that costs $20 a month. So my plan was to have Claude help me organize my photos, pull the information about items out of the photos, look up comps for pricing, both for the sales price and original prices, and then help me actually list the items. And I'll tell you how it did. So the first thing I did was take photos of the items. And the thing is that when you're working with AI tools, it's important to be really predictable so it can understand what you're doing. You have to be able to explain your logic of how you did something. So when I took those photos, I did it in a specific order. For example, if I was taking pictures of a pair of pants, I would take a picture of the front, then the tags, then any measurements, and then the back of the item. So it was easy for me then to explain to Claude exactly what kind of photos to look for. So my first prompt was to use Claude to group the photos by item. When you use Claude Cowork, you can give it access to a folder on your computer. So here's how I did it. I opened the Claude app. On the left sidebar at the top, I switched from regular Claude into Cowork. There's a tab for it. And then on the bottom of the prompt window, there's a plus sign, and I clicked the plus sign, I selected folder, and then I found the folder of Poshmark photos on my computer. Then I wrote my prompt. So I explained that I had photos in this folder. I explained what order I took the item photos in. That, I always started with the front and ended with the back of the item. I asked it to figure out how many items there were and group the photos by item. I asked it to identify for each item the brand, the size, the condition, what kind of item it was. Then I asked it to create a subfolder for each item, and I had it name it based on the brand and item type. And I asked it to move the photos for each item into its subfolder, and then create a text file inside each one of those item folders to record the brand, the size, the condition, and all the other information. I tried this with a couple of the different models. I tried it first with the lightest weight model, which is always the way I go. It saves money. But I did find here that the lightest weight model, the Haiku model, did not do a great job. It made a lot of mistakes. And again, it's showing you the plan before it actually moves files around, so this wasn't too painful. I found that the Sonnet was the sweet spot. It was able to do the work really well. I reviewed how it thought it should group the items. I could make a couple of suggestions, like if it didn't know a brand name, I could just correct it. And then it went ahead and organized my files. It did a great job. I opened up a few of the text files to take a look. I saw the item information in there, and I was pretty impressed. So if nothing else, I could have just taken this information and listed the items on Poshmark, and it would have saved me a lot of time. But I wanted more. So the next thing I did was to use Claude Cowork to get pricing comps. For whatever reason, pricing items on Poshmark is a huge pain point for me. I don't know if it's the decision fatigue of having to make so many decisions. Often I don't care that much about pricing. I just want to sell this stuff. One of the things I find really annoying is if I'm just using my phone to list things on Poshmark, when I try to Google item pricing and see similar items, it ends up opening the Poshmark app and then wiping out my draft. It was really nice to have some help from Claude Cowork with this. If you want to see the full prompts I used for this episode, you can look at my Substack. It's athomewithai.substack.com. Again, that's athomewithai.substack.com. To describe my prompt in general, I told it that there are the item folders with items I wanted to list on Poshmark. I wanted it to look up both the comp price and also how people had listed the original price, because Poshmark has a space for original price. And I asked it to add both of these pieces of information to that text file inside the item folder. I also explained how the Poshmark web address for searching is formed, the URL. It's poshmark.com/search, and then there's a bunch of things you can add on the end, like which department it is, what query, what are you searching for. You want to look for sold items, and then there's a way to add if it's new with tag. So I explained this structure to Claude Cowork. There's a reason why it's really important to look at sold items when pricing your items on Poshmark. Just because somebody has your address listed for $500 does not mean it's worth $500. There's a lot of aspirational pricing. It's important to look at sold items. That will give you the most realistic vision into how much your item is actually worth. Anyway, I had Claude Cowork do this research for me, add that information to my text files, and it did a great job. That brings me to the last thing I tried to have Claude Cowork do, which was to create the listings for me. Here is unfortunately where it got stuck. First of all, let me share how I set up my browser to let Claude Cowork to access my browser. I was a little bit apprehensive about giving Claude Cowork access to my regular web browser logged into my email and Google Drive and, with my credit card information saved or whatever else. I did not really want Claude Cowork to get into there. It could do something destructive. So I created a new Chrome profile. You could do that on the profiles menu item within Chrome. And I set up a completely empty Chrome profile, and the only thing I logged into was Poshmark. So I felt a little bit better about doing that. Then I made sure to close my regular one, and I had my new blank slate Chrome profile open when I gave Claude these commands. So I gave Claude a link to create new items on Poshmark. And I described what I wanted it to do, to use my items in all those folders and the text files in order to be able to create items on Poshmark. Immediately, it had trouble uploading images. And it tried to do some workarounds. I tried to Google a few things, but ultimately, I could not figure out how to get it to upload images. And that became a big problem because in Poshmark, in order to save a draft, you need an image. So it's not like it could just go do everything else and I could put the images in later. It couldn't even save one draft. So I pivoted to trying to have it do the rest of the listing form and pause when it was time to add images so I could add the images. But even that was incredibly painful. It was narrating step by step as it was going to every drop down and looking for things. It kept getting stuck. And maybe I didn't give it a good prompt. Maybe I could have done better, but I found it was just not worth the time I would be saving with that. So I just used those text files and those grouped folders to be able to really quickly create the Poshmark items from my computer, and it was fine. It did save me at least a couple of hours, if not more, and a lot of kind of like decision fatigue, a lot of mental pain. So ultimately, I thought this was a really great use of Claude Cowork, even if it couldn't go the final mile. I would love to hear what you do with Claude Cowork, if you have any great uses for it, if you've used it to list your Poshmark listings, or similar. My Substack is athomewithai.substack.com. That's athomewithai.substack.com. Happy prompting, and until next time.